If you're distracted, caught up in your own mind, or too attached to a notion of a path, something shows up that doesn't fit that path, you'll ignore it. And if you're distracted in your own thoughts and feelings and emotions, if you're really distracted, you won't notice much of anything. It really has to hit you upside the head. And we do have people that we work with who had their house burned down and things like that. It was like universe hitting them upside the head. A change is being made. Make the change. Things that you cannot miss. But it can be gentler than that. We don't need to have a house fire to make a major life change.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and seafood Taoist master, San Qing. And what a coincidence today. Sure enough, I just opened my camera and poof, here we have an incredible, amazing being from the universe. It must be Christmas. I want to introduce Juliet Trail, who's the executive director of the Coincidence Project. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you. So delighted to be here.
Yes, what a coincidence. You've never heard that before, have you? Yes, I would love you to share with the audience a little bit about yourself leading up to where we are today.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'll start a little bit with the background of the Coincidence Project because I can kind of say who I am in that context. So back in about 2015, I met Bernard Beitman, who is a psychiatrist and one of the first people to kind of systematically study synchronicity and meaningful coincidence in the style of Carl Jung, and studying many of the things that Jung first spoke of during the course of the 20th century. He coined the term synchronicity to refer to a connecting principle to explain how meaningful coincidences occur. And he called it an acausal connecting principle. So without two things causing one another, they both unfold in a way that reflects each other and brings meaning. And so Bernie studies that, and I met him in the course of another project, and we became good friends. And at the start of 2020, I had made a big career transition and left 16 years of work behind at the University of Virginia. I had been the director of education of the Contemplative Sciences Center. So that's studying the benefits and applications of contemplation.
Right.
And my specialty is really a focus on compassion. And it connects us and gives us a guide for how we might understand things, how we might meet them or resolve them, and how we might approach and act, what our behavior could be. Compassion helps provide guidance in all of that. And I left to found another small nonprofit organization called Courageous Compassion Connection. Because as I see it in our world today, we're really broken apart. And so we desperately need connection. And we need not just any kind of connection, but a very specific kind, so a compassionate one. And what is it going to take for us to do that? Courage, immense amounts of courage, because of how far we are from that, from being compassionately connected to the planet, to other beings, our sense of commerce and entitlement to produce things from the sweat of the labor and the physical being of others, is a little out of whack. And so I wasn't quite sure how to get going doing that. I had a lot of good ideas. But then this global pandemic thing happened. And I was like, oh, well, a lot of my ideas are not viable in this present moment. So I wonder what I'm going to do with myself. And Bernie sort of swooped in. We would get together regularly for dinner and catching up. And he said, well, how about you help me launch the Coincidence Project? Because I had been a director of this Contemplative Sciences Center and had other roles that were a lot around organizing people and ideas. And so I said, yeah, let's do it. So alongside of the ways I do Courageous Compassion Connection with programs and retreats and that sort of thing, we started bringing together people that Bernie had interviewed on his podcast, Connecting with Coincidence. I'd been a guest twice on that by that point in early 2020. And he'd done about 137 episodes. So I proceeded to view most of them and develop a list of people we thought might help us to kind of be a think tank around how would we organize ourselves for a project dedicated to meaningful coincidences, and how would we articulate our goals. And so over the course of the next 2 years, we met monthly. We started a public series called Coincidence Cafe. Excuse me. And we got formal nonprofit status in the US, although our we call them coincidence allies and coincidence ambassadors. Our community of folks that study and think about this and have experienced it are globally distributed. So we invited those coincidence ambassadors who were active with us to come onto our board once we were recognized as a nonprofit federally. And so, we had 10 or so that decided to formalize their involvement, and they are the governing group, so a very active board, a decision-making board. And they've been with us then since about 2022. We launched a nice website, thecoincidenceproject.net, and it has a lot of resources. So we're trying to be a kind of go-to hub for people that are curious about serendipity, synchronicity, meaningful coincidence. And there's a lot of other vocabulary people use to describe their experiences. And so we're trying to be inclusive and welcoming of all of it. And we have still our Coincidence Cafe every month, and we have a speaker series now. So some of these experts that have published on this, given deep thought to it, turned it into part of their life's work, can come and share their knowledge. And it's nice for each of us to kind of have a specialty within the project. We don't need to all have the exact same focus. Actually, we wouldn't be as rich or diverse if we did. So for me, my focus is on the connection between compassion and especially nature, the natural world, animals, plants, humans, and all other beings, and synchronicities. So how they arise in nature. And for me, there's a clear link between coincidences and compassion, because when we have a coincidence, something slightly miraculously unfolds. Some people call them like nods from above or signs from the universe, or when God winks. There's different ways people connected in their thinking and in their hearts. It kind of feels divine, or some part of the larger structure of the universe that's bigger than you or me. And the coincidence itself can be the answer to a dire need. There are people that get rescued by a stranger in the most unlikely ways, or even rescued by a loved one who somehow finds them in an unlikely place in a moment of crisis or need. And many people meet best friends or romantic partners and discover they have all kinds of alignment. My friend was just telling me, she's from Guatemala originally, and her mother and father met at a sewing factory in New York after they had immigrated to the US. But their cousins had been best friends, and they'd all gone to school together in the same tiny village in Guatemala, but never met and didn't know each other. The cousins knew one another, but these two individuals never met through the cousins. But the families were already deeply interconnected. And then here they are, of all the things in the world, working at a sewing factory in New York, which, there they were, and began dating and married. And now I have my friend because of that coincidence that these people from this little village should find themselves working together and finally get to know one another. And I hear stories like that all the time. And it might help people find opportunities, how they pick their school or their job. I knew one of our board members wanted to change directions in her career. And so she came up with a pretty specific new role she wanted for herself. And she went to a completely unrelated gathering, sat down, struck up a conversation with the person next to her. Their husband ran exactly that kind of company, and he had exactly that type of opening. And he interviewed her within the week, and within 2 weeks she was hired and had switched gears and was in a new role that she had been seeking. But she had no idea how to go about seeking it. She just held this intention, and then here the answer came. So sometimes people refer to that as serendipity type of coincidence. So this connectedness, this interconnectedness, we get to live it. Often I think the universe and the way that it works and whatever the divine may be. I think people have all different kinds of um, answers for what the divine is or is not. But
Mm.
there's a demonstration of how it at least operates when these coincidences happen, because something bigger than us takes place. And it takes us out of ourself to wonder, oh my gosh, how did that come together? How did my friend and colleague on the board sit next to the woman and happen to talk with her, and the husband had exactly the right opening and she was qualified for it. She was interviewed in a competitive pool, but she got the job. And so it was just like boop, boop. Even if she had tried to engineer a swift hiring, she probably couldn't have engineered anything that swift. And she didn't engineer it. She just longed for it. So, I feel like it shows us this compassionate field in which we live and operate, and the potential we have for leveraging and benefiting from our interconnectedness.
Yeah, that's really powerful insight. It sort of leads you into, within Taoism, we've been using, methods and cultivational practices that have been handed down from generation to generation. Myself being a lineage holder of two lineages of Taoism, one a 66 generation holder, another one a 126 generation holder, teaching people internal alchemy practices for over 30 years. And it works. And still to this day, very few people have insight into the deeper nature of these processes and how they're produced to separate electric from magnetic energies. And everything, in essence, a thought, feeling, and emotion is energy, frequency, vibration. So I find it interesting when you talk about coincidence, because there are none. And they're sort of like from a processes where we go deep into the actual energetic components. I'm curious to understand how it blossoms from, sort of like the apprentice to Sigmund Freud to Carl Jung. I mean, I noticed there's a resurgence of this obsession with a guy that probably in his heyday people didn't even really listen to that much, but now all of a sudden he's the godfather of insight from a left brain to right brain philosopher, or some sort of like greater thinker of something that is very sort of like separate. Because when you want that present moment, all the coincidences you're speaking of, when I train people to obtain that, and we go deeper into magic, literally is just a highly detailed manifestation. You have to be the present moment. So do you guys have like, are you practicing some type of processes? I mean, you're observing and recording and making note of these incredible coincidences. Do you guys lead people towards some sort of processes so they can repeat it themselves, or where do you go from this, incredible realization that this is happening and it's happening all the time, and how do you sort of fortify it and solidify it for someone that comes to you?
Yeah, well, we don't have only one approach or answer to how to there's noticing more of it, so increasing our awareness, and then there's experiencing, actually having more of it occur. So perhaps manifesting or stepping into it. People talk about getting more in tune with the flow, the flow states. We see more of it arising. So I think we're doing both things. We're kind of nurturing both awareness and the instances themselves. And some of those that we're working with have developed more methods to train people in those states of consciousness and states of being. I'm also a meditation teacher, so I teach a lot around mindfulness and compassion, which focus on that present moment centeredness, that we let go of the past and the future thinking and just really attend to what's arising. And I think when we do that, many things that unfold as beautiful, a series of coincidences, as meaningful, synchronicity, they were opportunities, and they might have been missed. They can be missed. So you have to kind of take opportunities and recognize possibilities when they're arising. If you're distracted, caught up in your own mind, or too attached to a notion of a path, something shows up that doesn't fit that path, you'll ignore it. And if you're distracted in your own thoughts and feelings and emotions, if you're really distracted, you won't notice much of anything. It really has to hit you upside the head. And we do have people that we work with who had their house burned down and things like that. Was like universe hitting them upside the head. A change is being made. Make the change. Things that you cannot miss. But it can be gentler than that. We don't need to have a house fire to make a major life change. It's just one possibility. So if we are attending to what's really unfolding around us with more clarity and being present, that's where both awareness and instances, the opportunities or occurrence of coincidence, can increase. And the example I gave of the person seeking the new job, she sat down at a dinner that had nothing to do with the market she was thinking about working in. It was totally unrelated, but she did decide to talk to the person next to her. And without that conversation, noticing this commonality that the husband needed someone and then this person needed a job and they were the same kind of job, they would never have discovered what they had in common. And it answered a need for both parties, and there's a lovely quote by the poet Rumi, the Sufi poet, that what you are seeking is also seeking you. And often you find that by just being in your place of clarity and stillness, but holding on to what's intended or what is needed, what is wished for or longed for, it arises. So with seemingly doing nothing, we somehow manifest or encounter that which is the next step on the path. And so we do a lot of guided practices in the course of our Coincidence Cafe and the speaker series. We'll do meditations and visualizations, helping people to get clear. We don't have consensus that there's only one method within what's possible, of meditation, contemplation, mental focus and awareness. You don't have to use contemplative language at all. You can use lots of words and we mean the same thing, right? The meaning behind our words. I would say one of our board members, Eon Karis, has written a lovely book on synchronicity and developed a synchronicity method. And we'll be helping her launch an updated version of her course where she helps people to do more of that kind of attunement to internal clarity and more present moment, grounded, centered, calm place of just kind of being ready, being ready to actually recognize what's unfolding.
Well, you had me at hello. It's strange. The one book I published, I'm actually publishing about 7 in the next 2 days. I've done a lot of stuff, but
congratulations.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, but the one book I have published is just so happens to be a very interesting title you might find interesting. It's called The Art of Synchronicity, the ancient art of synchronicity, how to manifest what you want and realize yourself as the universe. So I dig what you're saying and I understand it. I think fundamentally what you're saying goes against a lot of like these new age life coach mentors. For you to manifest, you must action. Now, from a Taoist perspective, we go straight to the center point, the center of the center of the center, which is what we call the stillness, the Wu Ji between the breath in and the breath out. Between yin and yang is the Wu Ji. The Wu Ji is the center point to all things, which happens to be the mother of all things, the Tao. So when you realize that, we speak on many things, but one of the most powerful things is you've already addressed it, the flow. Now the flow comes from what we call Wu Wei, which is effortless action, effortless effort. And so straight from the Tao Te Ching, we're very clear, when you let the man who's never left the village, let him know he's seen the world, it's all here. It's right there. And so everything has, you don't have to go outside yourself to find the answers, which I really love how you're sort of leading towards it, because a lot of the stuff that you're speaking of is sort of like you're coming from a very intellectual based sort of construct to more left right brain sort of like this is intuitive. So this kind of goes a lot of the things that you're sort of framing things in. And I mean, I've had many physicists, and one, quite frankly, is a friend of mine, Tom Campbell, who is a former NASA physicist and has worked with Bob Monroe. I don't know whether you know who that is, but Bob Monroe Institute, helping people realize their astral projection, out of body stuff. So he's been doing that for 60 years. He's very young, 80 years young, sprite young man. And, the consensus is clear. It's like, it's really quite simple. Is the glass half empty or half full? And how you perceive that from what he understands with his my big toe theory, which is the theory of everything, is he uses the large consciousness system as a template, and it will give you what you look for. And how I put it is basically the universe has no moral compass. So if you ask for it, you're going to get it. And so the synchronicity that you speak of, where your friend sat down at the bar and talked to someone, and poof, all of a sudden, now all they did was, I want a new job. They had that thought for one fraction of a second. They happened to be in the mood. Maybe they had their drink on, had a couple of drinks, got a little buzz in. They're there. They're in the state. And it just so happens, when you get to that state, and I measure brain waves because I'm a show me guy. I don't, I may teach people ancient practices, but you have to show me. And one of the really interesting parts of when you're on the path of a Taoist priest, one of the end results of it is you have to take like a sealed bottle of like vodka and remove the alcohol from it. Then you have to open the bottle and drink it in 60 seconds. Now, if you haven't removed the alcohol, you're going to have an interesting couple of minutes, couple of hours, couple of days. So there's a palpable, tangible shift in the energetics. And that is actually represents in a brainwave. So I have a friend of the channel who's a neuroscientist, and he measures brainwaves of psychics. I teach people psychic mediumship, channeling, physical healing, manifestation. And so you obtain a brainwave when you're in this state of realization. So for physical healing, I go anywhere from 40 hertz up to 400 hertz in brainwave state. So my brainwave, my frequency is at a 400 hertz. Now that's insane. That wasn't even on the menu 10 years ago as even a possibility. Yet that is in a state of physical. Like when I physically am witnessing a healing in front of me, when I attune to that state, my brainwave is right up there, and I've measured it with an EEG. So there's all these sort of things that sort of take you to this point where, oh my goodness, this is not as mysterious or mystical as we foresee this sort of like possibility is sort of like, oh, if you kind of get there. No, not at all. Within Taoism, there's a method, and we make sure the emotional state is the biggest thing. So you always start there. Remember, your emotions don't control you. You control your emotions. And people are like, whoa. The first thing I do is teach someone to put their emotions, their personality in the corner of the room, sit, roll over, and play dead, and be the observer. As my dear friend, the Buddhist monk, would say, I'm the dukkha. I'm observing the distortion. And when the distortion comes up, this lowers the vibration, which is in essence what we're talking about. So for the audience, everything is energy. Energy has a vibration. The vibration has a frequency. And if you can hold the resonance of that frequency, it's yours. So that means it's like, okay, well, what is that? That's all of the above. Everything we've spoken on today. It's like, you want the job, you want the life, you want the whatever it is. All you have to do is not believe in any specific sort of thing. You have to have a system that sort of rolls out that resonance with that frequency, and then it will be yours. And generally speaking, the only distance is, okay, you're obtaining a dimensional shift to a 3D reality. But again, that's sort of like a sort of front-loaded event. So you're using guided meditation. I think that's really powerful. Do you, and you spoke on, one of the board members has a book on synchronicity. These are all really massive components to creating this coincidence that we speak of. And there are more things that you're investing. Like I created an actual app that gives you that. So you literally, it's a visual audible experience. You hit play. You don't have to believe in Buddha, God, universe, anything. You sit there, but your nervous system will tell you, holy crap, I feel like I've had 5 pina coladas, a full body massage, and 10 days in the Bahamas, and I don't believe in anything. I clean toilets at McDonald's. What is going on here? But when I measure your brainwave, you're in the sweet spot, what I call the Death Star moment, where Luke goes in and he's going to take that one shot. You're in that brainwave. That means that you engulf the brain 100% for the audience. If you're in a gamma brainwave, you can access alpha, theta, delta, epsilon all at the same time. This is what we call 100% conscious. People are like, oh, what are the chances of that? Well, hey, this is what it's all about. I find it intriguing because you have a nonprofit, and I'm always looking for places where I can share my material with people that want to heal themselves. And so this side effect of using this app is I healed myself. Like random things, like I had heart disease, it's gone. I had hemorrhoids, it's gone. I had a headache, it's gone. Oh, all of a sudden I got my favorite job, a bag of money, the partner of my dreams. This is all brainwave. Have you guys looked at that as a potential within the sort of formula that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, it's really where we're going next, because we're a relatively new organization. And since we're a collective, we have to inform and debate and teach each other and sort of co-create the way, and I was just talking with Bernie yesterday. Actually, his next book, I think, is going to start trying to look at these frequencies and the resonance, and how we can do the things that you're talking about. So, I think you might be an ideal guest for us on our speaker series to share more about your app. And I think a lot of the people in our community would love that, because with Eon's course that we're going to help to launch, it follows from her book. So her book becomes a little bit of a handbook or a workbook for the course, but the course has a lot more because she leads a number of guided practices, and she's been teaching it for more than a decade in this format, but she's continually updating, and the technology used to deliver it is updating as we have advances. So that's her synchronicity method. I think is going to do a lot of the same kinds of work that you're describing, because that emotional piece, we're usually so activated and disorganized, and we're just sort of a maelstrom of reactions to everything we've experienced and things we've inherited, as well as what we've actually experienced in the moment to moment of our lifetime. There's a lot there. And I think reality seems to have become very compacted with both inherited trauma and the stressful and traumatic nature of most people's lives in this time on our planet. And so to, roll that up, put it in a corner and tell it to take a nap while you are present doing work is easily said and not easily done if people don't have a tradition or a practice that gives them the baby steps to get to that, because that's really kind of a level of mastery, to put our stuff away, to put our sense of self away, to even acknowledge that this observer, this one who is and sees, is separate from this self that we've created and that we think acts in the world, this organized sense of self. Not everybody can go there. I love that your app can just work on the level of resonance and frequency, so that cognitive convincing you this is so that you'll give it a shot. You can bypass that. That's nice.
Well, it's not. It's kind of like not bypassing. It's
experience.
Well, it's It teaches you to identify the dukkha, and so the emotional content is your suggestibility, which is the lie. And so you believe that what you're experiencing is the truth, which is fundamentally not true. And so you just continually repeat that. But when you have the actual ability to cease and stop a state that you're in, I normally, this is like basement level stuff. This is the first thing I train someone in. And within this app, anyone, whether you're John Smith or a Dalai Lama, in 9 weeks, you will be realized as the master, keeper, creator of your reality. That's the first level. So, the emotional content, it dials in your actual energy centers. So when you get into the regulation of the energy flow, all of a sudden, from a Taoist perspective, you reveal the virtue over the emotion. So you're not having stagnated energetic resistance within the physical body, which is generally how you come to the conclusion why you feel the way you do, think the way you do, act the way you do, is all deep within the fascia, within the tissue, the physical representation of what you believe is your identity of who you are. And so the visceral kinesthetic response is a validation. And instantly when you feel that, it's like, I always remind people, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And that really is how you identify. So you train the nervous system, you entrain it. So you create new synapses in the brain, you entrain it, and you're able to move the emotion out of the way real time. This is battle stuff. This is not like, hey, I picked up Calm and I want to play it. Oh, I feel so relaxed. And I got LeBron to tell me a bedtime story. And I woke up in the morning and my wife told me that we're losing the house because it's being foreclosed on. And I shit the bed. This type of stuff, right? This is what I want you to be able to apply it in your reality. If you spend 27 minutes a day using this app, instantly within the first day, you can measure your results. I have this actual exercise that you do where you can create the state instantaneously, tap into your nervous system, and how how far you've got instantly. It's not like use it for 6 months and see whether you're kind of relaxed. No, that's not how. If it comes in instantly, it can go out instantly. That's how it works. The universe is now. So I really love what you're saying, because I always look for basically institutions like yourself that offer this stuff, and I want to help others. That's my whole goal, is to help people acquire this state and to raise the conscious collective, because as you know, the synchronicity, the more and more you apply it, the more and more it becomes realized, if you understand how you got there. If it's sort of more like a question mark, then we just need to help you sort of get into a realization. And you mentioned certain emotional states, and I feel like that's really important, but most people get the hallmark version. And so most people go, oh, just be love and just be free. And I'm like, I appreciate that, but until further noted, your idea of love is subjective. And so love is like, okay, you grab someone and they're initially being braced with this new concept that we're sharing with them. Their version of love is razor blades and bunny rabbits, whereas another person might be unicorns and rainbows. And so you have to create an ability to master that you can obtain this energy, vibration, frequency, and then hold that resonance. And so that's where all of a sudden you can then form this universal love from a progression that makes it possible. And you mentioned courage. It's an interesting one. I kind of like always go from love as the low level. Then I take someone to gratitude, because if I give you $5, you're going to feel happy. Or I tell you you're good looking, you instantly acquire a validation of your own self. And people can resonate with that gratitude, where finally within a Taoist is accepting and allowing all things as one. And so love is sort of the baseline, and you go up from there, but that's just how we use it. But once you become one with all things, it's sort of like you're not subject to the normal stuff that most people are limited by. And that emotional contact would have to be the biggest, I believe, the biggest hurdle that anyone goes over, until further noted, until they're given insight like this, like all the things you're sharing or things that I share, to give them a greater understanding of the nature of reality. What are your thoughts on that? Because a guided meditation can be very, very powerful. And I imagine that you've been doing this quite a long time. So you
Mm-hmm.
can change someone's state instantaneously.
Yeah.
What are some of the effects? Because I'm going to just say effects, because
Mm-hmm.
within Taoism there is no good or bad. So what people perceive as darkness is just as light is dark.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I guess, the courage piece for me to ping that one um, is that we've lost contact with this mode of being you're describing, this oneness, being that still point, the center of the center. Um, and it can cause a lot of fear, even if people long for something better than the reality that they're sort of slogging it out in. It's actually terrifying to really let go of what's familiar. Our nervous system is really set up, even if there's abuses, even if there's toxicity and harm being done, and the nature of how someone's life is going, it can be really hard to let go of it. We have a lot of attachment and a lot of fear of the unknown that's sort of inherent in humans. So it takes a little bit of courage to kind of get over the initial hump of what if, let's see, okay, maybe, and then it can work if it works, but there's a resistance to even letting it work or even trying it out, because one of the things we'd like to see with the Coincidence Project is to go mainstream, to make meaningful coincidence as part of how the universe operates, just a commonly known fact, because we see this happening for people in every continent, every age group, from the youngest to the oldest, every type of education and no education, every type of belief system and no belief system. It operates regardless. It doesn't take into account any of those very subjective, very specific experiences or ways of thinking, ways of being, traditions that often divide us. This goes beyond and above that. As you're talking, about this, you can instantly kind of get to the state and all the rest of these trappings that are causing so much violence and conflict in our world, and conflict and violence within ourselves. People are very hard on themselves. A lot of conflict, a lot of violence is internalized, and we're experiencing it from how we're knocked about in the world, and even what we do within our own thoughts and our own emotions. So to get clear of all of that it's a bit of a heroic journey at this point, because so many people are mired down in a level where they're not. They're longing to be free, but they have no idea that they already were free all along. They just have to let go. They just have to release and trust, and that's hard. To do something new takes an element of trust. And another thing that you were talking about with this kind of access that we have to this more non-dual state, that there's not just good and bad, there's not, that everything is one, and we're not separate either, that everything is part of this collective, and that you said that the universe itself has no moral code. So I wonder, when we get more and more of our fellow species beings, our fellow humans, in this zone, will we, my sense is that there will be less harm created, because if other beings are me, why would I wish to continue to harm myself? And if other peoples are my people, why would I wage war on them? So for me, it becomes a more compassionate existence, kind of without any effort. It just is. Because if it is myself, let's treat it all well. Why would we do anything else? We get to that state of immense gratitude. Like, it's beautiful that we get to exist, that we have a consciousness, that there is an observer to observe, is such a gift. Why would we squander it with harm? And so I think out of that, for me, it is a sense of ethics or morality, to do no harm, to treat things well, to meet everything with immense gratitude. I wonder what you think of that, because you were talking about the lack of morality, but maybe does a morality emerge? I mean, what do we do with that piece of it? Because one thing I will qualify it with, one thing we worry about and think about within the Coincidence Project is as people gain a little bit of skill, a little bit of mastery with being in the right state, with getting in the flow, with manifesting. We have a lot of selfishness on the planet, and there's a lot of people, within the meditation teaching that I'm doing, within mindfulness and compassion, there's a lot of critique from within the community as well as outside of this MIC mindfulness. People master enough to make their workers more compliant. They don't change how toxic they are and what they're doing to mistreat them. They just get them all meditating. So they feel a little more relaxed and groovy, and they're a little more stress tolerant. They don't change the stress, they change the tolerance. They continue the stress, they don't care. But they do want them to not rebel. So they'll use enough mindfulness, to just get people more complacent. And that's a rather insidious use of something that was meant to be about liberation. But instead, some people can kind of manipulate it to be a tool of continued captivity of others, those in power, those in less in power. And we would not want people gaining greater mastery over synchronicity and over manifestation to suddenly just have more power and then control other people that don't get it and misuse it. Keep some people locked down, or give them only enough that they're compliant. So where does the morality of this kind of work enter in your thinking?
Well, it's interesting because you bring up an interesting point where just being human is just all an ego. So all the emotions above, including love, is just subject to a human's perception of reality. Mm-hmm. Whereas the frequency that we're speaking about, it just polarizes the trappings of what you would consider low what, being, fear-based. And so when you hold that resonance, doesn't matter who you are, you just become one with all things. And the side effect would in turn from face value be that you're more at one with the consensus of everyone is the same, everyone has the same value, everyone is one with all things. So it becomes neutralized. But meditation is kind of a far, like just meditating in of itself would be way more investment than what's necessary in today's society. I mean, when I mention if you're emotional, you're suggestible, that's all it takes for me to enter your unconscious. It takes me about 3 seconds. And so, if you're familiar with things like, something a little bit more rough around the edges, like hypnosis, which I teach my kids, and I'm out here in Nevada, so sometimes we'll go on the strip and we'll play street magic and invite people to experience what it's like to be completely in a euphoric state in about 3 seconds. And I'll have my 8-year-old drop someone into a state of complete bliss in seconds. So the idea that you're ramping up is generally a construct of your perception of reality, whereas the actual state itself is instant, just as we are moving at light speed. Beyond light speed is kind of like how you sort of like fundamentally understand how things sort of work. So when you frame it out with that emotional content, one of my teachers, Latsu, who I channel on a daily basis for direct source information, he would be the new age version of the Akashic records, but I've been using his source of information for 30 years now. And you just get things that are validating within this 3D. This is not I'm not interested in, ideas of an anecdotal experience. I want evidence. I'm an evidence-based guy. I got to see it. Show me the healing, show me the change, show me the manifestation. I want to experience it right now. And I'm that's my personality. And they're like, you're a priest. How can you be like, that's a personality. It's like, guess what? My personality likes Netflix, chocolate M&Ms, and riding my side-by-side on the weekend. That has nothing to do with attaining a resonance that can change people's reality in a fraction of a second. So the meditation thing, I find interesting the way you sort of poise that and propose that as an option, but that's a lot of work. You can, if you turn on the news, you're already controlled. If I do this, you're controlled. I can control you just by putting my hand out, and you have no idea that you're now submitting to the will of someone else. And then the idea that you have free will is nothing more than an idea until otherwise noted. So you change when you realize that there is this processes, all of a sudden the conscious and unconscious, holy moly, really? If I was to quote someone like Bruce Lipton, and he says, it's 5% consciously, 95% unconscious. I mean, this is his measurement. I wouldn't know the specifics, but let's just say we use that. We're still not operating. So free will is sort of like an idea, because even if you understand that there is a margin between the two until otherwise noted, until you access a state of brainwave that you can access that and then change your behavior, you're going to be subject to, it's New Year's Eve. Next year, I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to do it. And then a week later, you see the same person and you're like, what's going on, John? You're eating ice cream, drinking beer, and watching TV. I don't know. I don't know. Whatever. Because how possibly can you take a 5% conscious behavior and arm wrestle a 95% unconscious behavior that is an autonomous sort of circumstance that you are not aware of? And then we get into all the numbers. But I would say that, you get subject. What I notice is there's just no space. There's no space for the trappings of a highly emotionally low watt experience. It just dissolves as you continue to resonate higher. For example, if you're using your meditation model, the more and more that I think a lot of people they don't realize that physicality as opposed to consciousness is completely different. So when you go and work out at the gym and you lose 20 pounds and you're in great shape, if you don't maintain that, you will lose all your gains. Whereas the category of consciousness, you can not meditate for a week and come back to it, and it'll probably be 10 times as strong, because there's this different state that you're in there. Did you access your nervous system, which is sort of like a baseline of what your reality is, an anchor to consciousness, and things change. So fundamentally, I believe that more people like yourself teaching people mindfulness and meditation will result in a universal sort of acceptance with, what we consider mankind, humanity, whatever you want to call it. There will be this group collective of embracing that. And with that, one of the side effects is sort of a blissful, euphoric state of just being whole. And when you're whole, part of the effects of being whole, feeling that, is just you're high in love with everything. It's like you don't have to take anything external. It just is present from here, and it expresses itself. I mean, we could use a model of, neuroplasticity and syncing the brain with the heart and creating the coherent signature that people identify with. And that's just one model. And I think it's more being framed that way as a very popular way to identify with stuff that I've been teaching for decades and within Taoism for hundreds of thousands of years. I say that and people are like, what are you talking about? Taoism's not even around 6,000 years, 3,000 years. I'm like, listen, I've had people on my channel that have spent their life pursuing the origins of humanity, and the human being, there's actual information that can be validated that there's evidence that we've been in the same state for 1 million years. You just got to look for it. And so, it's like, where is the filtration of information? So I would say that comes back to what you're saying when it comes to, well, what do you think? If it's not a moral sort of compass, and I always say that because it really is, when human beings are about themselves, which they are, because that's just part of the ego. I get my teacher Lao-Tzu, people will be like, what's happening with 2024? Is the world going to be over? The financial system's going to fall in a heap. Everyone's going to die. It's going to be massive apocalypse and everything. And you know what he said? It was really funny. It happened at the beginning. He goes, imagine this. You're like a grain of sand asking the beach, what are we doing today? What you need to do is fall back into the beach and be realized. And so, that need as a human being, it's about me. Yeah. What's going on with me? What's going to happen? Is there going to be death and destruction? Listen, you can perceive it that way, the more and more you really allow yourself to realize that everything is interconnected. You are me, I am you. And that charge you got about 10 seconds ago through your body is that visceral charge I'm talking about. It's like, holy, that was an energetic charge. It's like, how do you see that? Well, I just see it because I'm trained in clear senses to see it. And I also experience it. It's like what they call a front-loaded precognitive experience. And so, all these things are sort of like, I think we're right at the same place, you and I, and I'm really excited. I feel like the foundational stuff that you talk about, I want to ask you this because I've never understood this. What is everyone's obsession with Carl Jung? What is it? I want to get it because I know that he was the apprentice to Sigmund Freud, and he rolled off and he sort of held his torch, but no one was talking about him up until like 10 years ago, consciously, that I know of. Because, in his day, he was probably thinking, I could just barely survive. Give me two quarters so I could buy myself a coffee or whatnot. And now he's like Emperor Palpatine from like Star Wars, something like that. The Darth Maul. Yeah. Like, wow. Mind trick.
Well, I will say, like, when I was in college and finishing my undergraduate degree, I looked at going into a doctoral program for psychology. And so I enrolled in a survey course for, the first course that I would take as a graduate student. I went ahead and took it. You could take it without having to be admitted yet. And they were so stuck in laboratory experiments where you take beings out of their environment, you manipulate circumstances, and then you see how they respond, and you extrapolate from that all these laws about human behavior. Because if you do it over and over, then a great number of people in a laboratory have responded in a certain way to something. So that's how humans work. And that, to me, was so short-sighted and mechanistic and ridiculous. And I thought about going to medical school, and I did a lot of work towards maybe I'll get the MD. And I worked in a hospital on a psych ward because I was still really interested in human psychology and human existence and how we make sense of it. And the way people were playing with brain chemistry, and the insurance can only give you 3 visits, one to decide what drug to give you, one on the drug, one a month later, how's your brain doing, how's your life now, oh, I don't know, and then your insurance is done paying, and now you've changed with someone's brain chemistry, but you've changed nothing about their circumstances. You haven't looked at anything about the context of their life from which behavior or patterns or harm or lack of wellness emerged, and so this lack of holistic awareness for me was just like a gaping wound in how we were practicing medicine and how we were understanding human psychology. And I was like, I just can't do it. I can't do any of it. So I'm also a musician. So I went and just got like a master's in music and just like made music for a long time. And I went on a vision quest led in tradition by teachers trained originally from Lakota Sioux elders. So my first training was helping with quests and eventually becoming a guide to teach about the medicine wheel and to get people prepared and even be able to guide people on quests, outside of our normal reality, but with this intention of change, of kind of a complete evolution from what we were before to what we might be in the future. And that for me, kind of this very indigenous practice of questing and just doing music and being attuned to what the arts do, it met what my soul wanted to be part of. And trying to be part of the psychological academic establishment or the medical industry did not. It felt like it was going to, rip my soul to shreds to be part of that. And people kind of went along with it. So, Jung was operating at the end of the 19th century and then well into the 20th century. I don't think he passed away, maybe something like 1972 or 73. I'm not great at the history, so I'm sure someone can correct me in comments if I'm not accurate. But he he was always exploring, and he was very much a consciousness explorer. He was deeply intuitive. I think he was someone really plugged in and probably channeling a lot of wisdom and a lot of insight without necessarily recognizing that in words explicitly. But he longed for and lived in a very holistic universe, and he had a very holistic and intuitive awareness. He kept decades of journals and talking about dreams. He studied astrology and found tons of correlations between astrological senses of wisdom and what he had seen unfold with, hundreds and thousands of patients. I mean, he went through tons of his own data of the records of all of his patients. And he saw all these trends that made sense when you applied their astrological chart to their lives, so that he felt he found immense amounts of evidence, and he connected with the physicists who were starting to get into the quantum understanding of reality. And so he went all the way to that sort of physics extreme of science. They left a lot in the middle behind because it just didn't appeal to him. And, he broke with Freud because Freud was much more 3D and sort of bound in reality, and their ways of being and ways of seeing the universe were not compatible. Although Freud himself late in his life was like, everything I wrote about before now was crap, and my understanding was really limited, and I don't really agree with myself. And I wonder what I'll think now, because I have this very new understanding, and then that was very late in his life. And we've based a lot of modern psychology off things Freud said earlier in his life that he himself thought were without a greater wisdom, without a greater experience. And I think Jung transcended that. And so in a lot of ways, people got kind of waylaid by this behavioristic trend in science. Psychology feels inferior to other sciences, and so they've tried to do things with data. And the whole method of investigation with the sciences is that something has to be replicated by others in exact circumstances with exact outcomes. Regardless of people and regardless of the researchers, you need to have replicable data. Well, it doesn't really work that way, how complex our lives are. So then they started putting people in labs and yanking them out of their lives and yanking them out of their settings, and then someone could replicate something. So then they said it was science, and they had an excuse to exist, as if psychology wouldn't be valid unless it could be like biology or ecology or chemistry. And so I think there was a lot, like 100 years of psychology just sort of getting a little lost and trying to compete and play the game the way the game was played in the other sciences. And then a lot of people were just like, this is just crap. Is there anybody that had something wiser to say? And, so William James in the US is another deeply intuitive kind of visionary psychologist. And he was very influenced by Carl Jung. So when people look back at the kind of beginning of the field, it began to bifurcate, very early on between this more heading towards the scientific method process, or Freud's kind of, not Freud, or Jung's tendency to just tap right in and go somewhere extremely innovative that maybe he couldn't document or prove using the scientific method. And people, I think there's just been a shift in our society for more willingness to find other sources of evidence, such as, let me have the direct experience myself. And if I'm transformed in this moment, I know it to be true.
Oh my goodness. Amen to that. I mean, I always remind people, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And authoritarians raise up and they get all puffy and they're like, how dare you give someone the power to empower themselves to actually decide and perceive what is the truth and not the truth. That there's an absolute truth. And I was like, this, when someone says absolute truth, I'm like, goodbye. You're in a state where there is no such thing. The truth is how you perceive it. And then they're like, but there's laws, there's foundations, there's structures. You cannot refute this. Oh, yes, I can. I'll show you. I can take I can take someone off the strip and just ask them they want to feel relaxed and literally put them in a state of trance, erase their name, turn myself into Justin Bieber, take their wallet and keys, and their friends are videotaping this, hold their wallet and keys in front of them, wake them up, and they're like, so when are we starting? And their friends are like, holy shit. And I'm like, hey, are you missing something? And they're like, you know what? Where are my keys? And I'm like, right here in front of you, cannot see it. And then they're like, oh, it's Justin Bieber. Oh my goodness. Where did he turn up? And on a deeper level, from a psychologist's perspective, you're having a reverse hallucination, but it's a state of consciousness. And then in the same second, I can click my fingers and you go, oh, what was I experiencing right now? It's right now. It can happen instantly. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's an interesting place to be in right now in today's sort of like conscious evolution or revolution or whatever you want to put it. Because I really, I accept all things, you know. I mean, I use the ancient indigenous practices that are repeatable. And, you know, when we go down to magic, it's like, okay, well, what is magic? That sounds kind of like very esoteric. And no, it's actually really framed out in a level of like, you know, understanding. And once you lay it out, people are like, oh, that makes sense to me. That's not some mysterious, mystical type of thing. No, it's we use frequency, energy, vibration, and we use the stars, the universe, and we cultivate those energies. And so a lot of people will have me go and do feng shui for them in their homes, in their life, whatever, understanding how energy flows, that I can pick up power centers and ley lines in anyone's house as a human dowser. You know, you have 6 or 7 in the property that you're in right now, and 2 that are lower frequency, and the other 5 are much higher power centers, power points. And like the thing that would be sobering for you is I could point them out to you, you could go over to them. You're not sitting in the lotus position. You're not calling in your guides and lighting 3 incense and singing Kumbaya. It's now. And you're like, whoa, hang on. I can feel an energy, a turbulence, a mass of something that is palpable, but I'm not in this state of I need to be out there to be there, because everything is happening right now. And I mean, dowsing, human dowsing has been around for, I mean, I don't know how long, but we use it within Taoism, part of our metaphysics program, but you can see it with your eyes. And so people get all, wow. But I mean, this is where people put their religious used to. They got real sloppy in the last couple of 100 years. They're not looking for the ley lines. They're not looking for the power centers, the higher points. They're not constructing and creating an environment that gets a high resonation. People are just dumping their religious shrines in, you know, crappy low frequency stuff. That's and they wonder why they don't get a congregation, or people are not gathering to want to come to their point. So I think it's really fascinating that there's this evolution and what you're speaking of. So that makes a lot of sense to me, because 30 years ago, I'd have people come to me going, I heard you're an exorcist. I need help. I'm like, okay. Oh, wow. And it's like, I've been doing one of my monasteries was founded on an exorcist. He channeled all his information from Lao, and he's a big badass exorcist. My name's on a monastery wall that's 2,000 years old. And that's what we've been doing as long as the day is. But here in the Western world, that's strange. That's weird. That's Chinese culture, my friend. That's how it works. And that's where most of the world is like. Whereas we come here and we're like, we're the melting pot in America, but yet we have indigenous practices from American Indians that have been going on for thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of years. But we want to dismiss that. We want to dismiss all the other cultures that we're bringing in. And, you know, I would even say up until 600 years ago, mysticism, metaphysics was an intricate part of science. They put that into the equation, and then all of a sudden someone went, I know, this is too hard. I don't want to measure this. Let's just go back to the matter. I like this. How is it? Cause and effect. There you go. That'll work for me. Let's just measure it that way. And so, you know, it's kind of like an interesting thing where we're at right now. And so 30 years ago, someone's like, I'm having a psychotic episode. Actually, you're not. Let me explain it to you. Holy crap. Whereas today, someone would have that same feeling and they wouldn't go to get their psych exam or an evaluation. They'd be like, I just channeled the Palladians and I'm all one with the universe. And, you know, and you look through the internet, they're everywhere. And you know what excites me is they're for real. You know, you can go to Yelp and find 500 psychics, 500 mediums, 500 healers. And they're not like back in my day. I literally would look for the charlatan snake oil salesman, and I end up doing on them or healings on them because they're full of shit. Whereas today, this is not the case. Today, I've never seen anything like this in my life. In 30 years I've been doing this. Today, in the last 10 years, it has changed dramatically where people are just like attuning, as we talk about the frequency, they're resonating there, and poof, I'm a healer. Poof, I'm a psychic. Poof, I'm a medium. Poof, I'm a channeler. And therefore, they're legit. They can show you. What are your thoughts on all that kind of revolution? You probably noticed it yourself being in the space.
Yeah. I mean, I'm working on a book now called Compassion Revolution. Because that connectedness, that being one and dropping the ego, for me, I can use compassion to describe those things. And it's not the only word for it, but it fits well enough that it makes me very happy. And so I do see this kind of massive shift that's taking place. And then there's, people still operating from a place of ego, really fighting back, so you also see more fanaticism and totalitarianism and a lot of violence and a lot of unchecked capitalistic crap going on. It's sort of like the counterplay. It's like the point and the counterpoint. You have all of this evolution and then all of this sort of reactionary, like closing up. No, I want my toys. I need control, from other people. That's very alarming. And like you said, you turn on the news and you're instantly controlled because they only want to tell you that story. Because as you also said, let me make you emotional. You're mine. I own you.
That's it.
And, I stopped watching the news. I stopped turning it on, back in like the late 90s. I was just like, this is reprehensible. It's disgusting. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to find other ways to get some information in a print format about what's happening in the world. But I'm not, it's called programming for a reason. Programming on our TV because it programs us. And I don't wish to be programmed. I want to understand the nature of reality and decide myself. So I don't opt in for those things.
Yeah,
my personality enjoys a little bit of Netflix, but I'm very conscientious about what I'm going to consume. And if it begins to have a kind of adverse reaction in me, I just don't watch it. I'm sort of attuned to what kinds of creation, what kinds of art raise my vibration, or maintain it in a way that's pleasant, and what things are trying to suppress and lower me and take away my sense of power or will or discernment. So even in the arts, you have to be kind of discerning. And I'm a musician, so there's forms of music that really don't do it for me, and the other forms that are very much,
it's like the 440 hertz ain't going to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas exactly. That's really interesting when you get past that and realize it's like, I appreciate things like NLP, but I don't like it. Yeah. And my personality doesn't like it because most people that gravitate to NLP want to control people. They're not doing it. Oh, I want to help people. I just want to enlighten people. I want people to be healed. No, you want to straight up control people. And, that's not high level stuff. Like when you get into trance, I want people to know when you get into trance and hypnosis, that's identifying that person has a ability to focus like this. It's very powerful, but realize that when I'm talking about a healing or a high gamma brainwave, we are talking about it's beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. And so you can't measure it. It goes into a resonance that is what we call God, source, chi, prana. It's like what a scientist would equate to a scalar wave. It's not the same. It's a different healing resonance. Mm-hmm. And so you change the whole deal because you can't, it's kind of like, within the NLP model, I mean, everyone goes, oh, I know Tony Robbins. I mean, he's been making billions of dollars for decades manipulating people. And then he sells it back to you. I want to empower you. I want you to go on. I understand that. But most people go, oh, I can control someone. And I mean, it's so easy to do. Now, for example, just for fun, sometimes I do this where I'll have a dialogue with a waiter and I'll literally hand him an invisible credit card. And he'll take it and come back and go, thank you, sir. You have a nice day. And it's a state of conscious. Then I'll, of course, go, hey, sorry, bro. I was just messing with you. Here's the money. But you can get into that state when you start with a dialogue, and that's the problem. Yeah. That is a problem. It's problematic. It comes back to what we were speaking of. You get programmed. Everyone can be programmed until otherwise noted. You realize that, and you're like, no, I'm not buying it. I can discern and affirm whatever I want. I'm far more alert. I'm conscious. I want people to be conscious. I want people to be conscious. And what is consciousness to me is realizing you have options. You have choices. And so when you get there, all of a sudden you start taking it back. You bring that conscious process back and you become mastered in it. But otherwise, you're like the sheep, the blind leading the blind, and you're literally following the programming of whoever wants to program you. And it's a vicious. And so when people get into NLP, they literally love that. Some of the failed like NLP students are most of Congress. Like literally, and some are even bigger, higher up people that are in very positions of power. Maybe some of the most powerful people in the world are failed students of our very good friend Tony. And they use it by attempting. You can see it. Like when you hear someone talk, a politician specifically, I would like to talk to you today about the state of the union. And so anyone who understands anything about psychology, about hypnosis, about any sort of thing, linguistics, this person has instantly hooked you into what we call pacing and leading. So now you're pacing and leading, and you've got the attention of that person. And by using their neurology, i.e. their mirror neurons at the base of their brain, they are literally following you, and they don't realize they are. And if anyone's in doubt of that, go to Starbucks, sit down, find someone in the room you want to connect with, and start mimicking their physical behavior, then sink into their respiration, start replicating their respiration. In about 30 seconds, you will breathe at the same respiration they do. And then what will happen is when you move your arm, they'll move their arm. So that's how quickly you can sink into this mirroring effect. So I don't like it when someone does that. It's when you're doing guided meditation, you're doing it for you want to contribute to the conscious collective. You want to contribute to someone's mastery of themselves and finding a deeper center of the center of the center. But generally that's what a meditation is. And if it's a guided one, you're just sitting there and someone is programming you. It's just the same. So you want to be mindful of the people that you allow to program, but I'm also not going to fear pedal, because you don't have to fear pedal. It's just they're having this moment now where they're listening to this dialogue and people are like, wow, I never thought about, I had no, holy, whoa. And consciousness, and they go, wow, this is a whole new reality. And, so many people like that listen to my podcast or when I have guests like yourself on, and they get so much out of it because I just give it all to them. I'll give it all to you. It's like there's no in between. I'll teach you everything: the magic, the internal alchemy, linguistics, higher states of consciousness, manifestation, you name it. I'll teach it to you. If you sit on one of my podcasts, you'll walk away with about 10 tools that you can use instantaneously. Hey, look. You will not be able to resonate high enough. It'll get very boring after. I'm manipulating people. Okay, that's great. After a while, you'll go like, oh, that was fun. Now what? Yeah. And at a certain point, it will become problematic because you will be subject to the duality that you still reside in. And the duality is where you fail. And this is where this whole karmic model exists, and it only exists here. The Taoists don't believe in karma. Karma is a subjective sort of thing that is operating in a duality. That means that if you believe in good and bad, up and down, in and out, you will be subject to that. So if you walk under a ladder and you believe you're going to have good luck will find you. If you walk under a ladder and you believe you're going to have bad luck will find you. But you get these absolutists, and they're like, karma is the law of the universe. Says you, it's the law of the universe. And they're like, I'm like, bro, I'm like, brah, let me explain something to you. It's your truth, and your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. The universe is not sitting there going, I need to craft all this mental construct of how you perceive things from a humanistic perspective that gives you an outcome of how you're supposed to be programmed, right down to the programming. It's so interesting. So when you do that, you stay away from the news media, of course, and then you stay away from public speaking, or you stay away from the local busker down at the open air mall that wants to get 25 cents from you because, hey, I'm just focused on the juggling. It's just got me in a trance. Here, let me give him $5. It happens that way. It's that quick.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to experience what you want to experience without being fear-based?
Mm. Well, for me, I want to connect way beyond humans. Humans are pretty tedious and exhausting. Humaning is exhausting. And being human so exhausting. So I like to spend a lot of time around not humans, which is the whole rest of the planet. So, I spend a lot of time in nature and a lot of time with animals. And I have a decades since my first vision quest, like helping me really attune my own senses, my own intuition. And I just navigate away from people that are playing those games. And I can usually sense when people are lying, they're telling falsehoods. And I don't necessarily know what the truth is. I know what the truth isn't. It's what they're saying. And people that are doing that, I have no time for them, because it's like you were saying, you just give it all away. Because when you just want everybody to be able to level up. You just want everybody to be able to be free of these entrapped prisons where we just keep harming one another. So there's no need to compete and trademark and copyright and brand it and make your Tony Robbins megalomania empire off of it. No interest in any of that, So I've been trying to do more public speaking and more podcasts, and I'm working on a couple of books. And oops, sorry, my cat always wants to be with me when the energy raises a little. She's like, me too. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats usually by my side when I'm working. The dogs are just down on their beds.
now, it's interesting with a cat, because a cat will be drawn to a certain frequency, right? Whereas a cat is really good at absorbing low watt and then dispersing it. So, when you come across an animal that, if you go through 5 animals that all have cancer, understand they're falling on the sword for you. And so these animals are nothing more. They're the present moment. They don't have anything. So they're absorbing. But cats specifically, they go to ley lines where there's lots of water. And so if there's running water under your house, and they want to sleep there. And so the water element actually draws from your life force. So if you're sleeping on a water line, you're going to feel exhausted. You're going to have a lot of physical problems going on, because the water is drawing the energetics from physicality, and it will transmute into, a myriad of different things. And where the line lays is where you realize, it's like, I can't sleep in this room. I don't know what it is. It's irritating. There's something about it. But the cats will go to it, and they absorb it on their fur, and then they flick it off. It's like, really interesting. So it's like you have the elements of these incredible beings that just literally take one for the team. Literally. So wherever they like to lay, I'd be interested. I'd follow that and go, maybe this is also not the place I want to hang out. And it's not when they're laying on you, because they're absorbing whatever you're admitting. Like, they literally will take your emotional state. That's why people are like, I love my service dog or my service animal, because the animal's literally taking it for the team instantly. And it's like, I just feel good. And most people just feel good because that's what these animals are doing. They're literally helping you regulate your energetics. I don't know whether you were familiar with that, but yeah, that's kind of how they work. So that's why they're sort of like, they're just amazing. Yeah, they are. They're incredible. They're selfless. They're endless. They're limitless when it comes to unconditional love. It's like that little being there can look at you no matter what. Now, cats are a little subjective. they kind of like, they can be like, hey, dude, I've had enough, like back off. A dog, on the other hand, is pretty much, take me,
Yeah.
whatever you want me to do.
Yeah. I mean, I've been really enjoying just vibing with the soil, and the moss and the mycelium, feeling attuned to the network beneath the surface where all the plants have created community, and they're all interconnected and interbeing. And so I try to get my bare feet, in the dirt on the earth as often as possible. And I do like ecstatic or conscious dance a lot, especially outdoors barefoot. So I can just like exchange that energy directly with the earth, because unlike with an animal, I wouldn't, if I'm having a hard time, I wouldn't want my pets to absorb it. I don't want that to be their burden, and I want them to take one for this team, but the earth, the soil has immense, and the network of all the beings that are woven just beneath our soil. It's not going to harm all of them if I kind of take my issues there. So, more and more lately, when things are challenging, I just want to take it to the earth, to the dirt itself. And sand and water can help too, but I really find soil extremely helpful for just thriving, because there's a lot of accumulation, there's a lot of ego in this world bandying all kinds of things about, and I'm really not vibing with a lot of that. It's much more where I'm with you, the 5,000 healers and 5,000 channelers and 5,000 medium and 5,000 people attuned to synchronicity. I'm with that group of folks, but sometimes you can feel there's a distance. The internet's been great, especially since the pandemic, that it just totally normalized us meeting together virtually around the world, so I've been finding really cool people all over the place to talk with and interact with, and we get this energy exchange even though the technology is connecting us. I'm sure we had technologies to tap into the network of the other shaman on the planet, and we didn't need Zoom, we didn't need anything, you just tap into it. You're still tapping into Lao Tzu as your teacher, even though he's been gone a long time. He's not gone, he's still there. So he's still your teacher. And this technology, we can leverage it as a way with our limited sense of tapping in that most of us have to get connected and to meet new beings. So for me, it's all about that discernment of figuring out what nourishes me and what's worth my energy and my input and my time and what I want to be exchanging with. And when the exchange is not nourishing, when it's draining, I'm just backing away and learning how to say no better and just making myself absent. It's like, well, you were showing up for this for a while, we haven't seen you. It's like, yep, you haven't. Enough said. Because I don't need to battle. I don't need to do battle with the things I don't feed from and I'm not nourished by and that are not resonating in a way that's more harmonious, compatible, or similar. But I am going to be navigating towards the place where the resonance is harmonious and compatible, and similar. So that it's just that intuitive discernment. I've been working on it for a few decades now, and I can kind of just go off that. It's just like human dowsing, like you can see some people coming and you're like, nope. A mile away. Like, no, we don't even need to interact, because it's, I don't need to control other people to try to control their rate of awakening, and so I'm not going to spend my time with people that just want to do battle and debate. And it's much more like, let's go where there already is this positive frequency, because it does already exist in our reality, in our world. So we just need to I've been seeing us, like, I've had this vision of little radio towers all over the planet, the planet like spikes on a porcupine or something. And we're all like just beaming out the frequency. So we're all just trying to amplify the signal. So when we give it away, we amplify the signal. We don't have to guard it. My husband's just coming, and my dog's very excited to see him every day. But we just want to amplify the signal. We just want to, calling it heart beam radio. It's like the heart resonance, just sending that out. And so sometimes I'm not interacting with anyone, because it's been much more about just being with that state and just staying in that center, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we covered a lot. We went over a lot today. I think collectively we're on the same path, and I would love to share with your community and invest in it by giving people the opportunity to use something that can help master themselves, because it's important that there's a level of repeatability.
Yeah.
Just being random, yet it's like a glimpse we call it in my business. You get a taste. It's like you get a little hit. I got a hit of the spiritual crack pipe and I'm addicted. Once you get that hit, and I think that's what happens when you go on the psychonaut route, is you
Yeah.
get into, I get a hit, but now I can't repeat it. I got to do it again.
Yeah.
And what I like to teach people is, you've got that. That's open a gateway. You can't repeat it. Let me show you how to repeat it, because it is repeatable, and you
Mhm.
can't. Some people go, "Oh, I had a DMT experience for 20 minutes." I can give you a DMT experience that lasts 3 days. Let's just use the cultivation, get inside yourself and start, realizing how powerful you are, because everyone could do it. There are no exceptions. It's not, oh my goodness, I have to be this certain person to acquire this. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
Lies, 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 lies. And so when you get there, it just so happens the side effect is you just become selfless and just in love with everything, as if you've taken ecstasy forever. It's like, I just love everyone. It's like, well, you can do that without having to take ecstasy. How's that sound? Just like, and that resonance then stays there. You're just like, I'm just happy. I'm in love with everyone. Everyone is just perfect, as they should be. And that's where people get tastes of things, and then they don't get to replicate it. And that's what I like helping people with. So, well, I think we did an amazing job of covering a lot of stuff. What I want to ask you in closing, what is your definition of consciousness?
Mm. Oh, so good. Well, recently I've been thinking that matter and consciousness may be exactly the same thing. It's just everything.
I love
Like
it.
sentience is everywhere, consciousness is everywhere. We live in a conscious universe.
I love it. I love it. It's like no one ever has the same definition as it should be, because there is no absolute. There's a million ways up the mountain. People need to always remember that there is no right or wrong. However you are, you're right where you need to be right now. And when people understand that, oh, well, I've done it too soon. Should have done it soon enough. There are no regrets. It's this present moment.
Mhm.
That's just an emotional, humanistic sort of limitation when you start going, oh, I should have done it sooner. I should have. No, 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 no. Right now. It's all yours. And so in closing, I'm going to put all your social under this podcast. And I want to just get people to come and find you. So just share with the audience, a little bit, what are you offering? You have a website, you've got somewhere where people can contribute to the community, or what's going on with you today?
Yeah, so people can join up for the email list and also contribute their own stories on a story forum on the Coincidence Project, all spelled out, thecoincidenceproject.net. And the best way to find me and reach out to me is probably through LinkedIn. I'm working on a website to go with Compassion Revolution, so that there'll be more web lately. We've been really working on the Coincidence Project website to put lots and lots of resources. We have a really great resource area, books, movies, documentaries, research articles, popular press articles, you name it. You can click on the type of topic you want to explore. Like I want to know more about dreams. I want to know more about astrology. Or you can click on, I want to see all the academic articles you're tracking. So we've got a really good resource area for people that just want to learn and explore. And we love to see people posting new experiences of their own on the Story Forum. And then on LinkedIn, just look me up, Juliet Trail, and people can reach out through the messaging system there if they want to get in touch. And there's a lot more information about my work, and you can see other podcasts I've done and other talks I've given and things like that.
So very cool. So very cool. So grateful for you. I'm grateful that you spent time today. I really appreciate you spending time today on the podcast. I am grateful to the universe for bringing you into my life, and grateful to the audience for sharing their time with us. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you in the next one, guys.